That was my glitch for the day. All right. Coming down to this point, applying this, all what we've been talking about, both to ourselves, to each other, recognizing as we go along through this, the gravity, and I'll say it again, the gravity of the parable that we looked at. We're talking about salvation. This is about eternity. It's not about being a relatively better Christian than other people. It's not what this is. We're being graded on a curve. The Lord is going to return. Let's just remind ourselves what this is.
Amen.
We are going to stand before him. And so all of this, our day-to-day stuff can make us kind of let the world crowd this out and not take it as seriously or dwell on it like we should. Just to make a little plug here as far as dwelling on things or meditating on things. There's a series that Brett did for the Miller Street congregation on the subject of meditation. I strongly suggest that you look at that series. It's an 18 sermon series, and every one of them is worth it. You start with the first one and go through it. It's about meditation, and it has to do with really putting your mind on these things so that the value that they are really sinks in for us, and it becomes very powerful. Anybody know what I mean by this? What about the 80-20 rule? Somebody who understands what I mean by this, can you explain it to everybody else?
20% of the people do 80% of the work.
20% of the people in a congregation are doing 80% of the work. Have you seen that happen? And it's not just congregations, an organization, whatever it is, the workplace or what have you, you have your people who kind of piddle, and you have the other ones who get it done. I think it was John Maxwell who said, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And why is that? Because they're busy. They're getting stuff done. But we have this condition it's just, I guess it's a human tendency. But we look at that. My question is, are we resigned to it? Oh, well, that's just the way people are. What are you going to do? Is it wrong?
Yes.
Is it wrong? And so it sounds very judgmental for us to look at that and say, that's wrong. When you think about the consequences that we're discussing right now, okay, someone's offended by me pointing this out to them. I'd rather cause offense, I guess, than to look the other way. And that's not to say that I always step up and make sure that I'm wagging my finger or anything like that. There's plenty of times when I should have said something and I didn't. Mm-hmm. Our talent's only for the select few. This goes to I'm the no talent guy, or whatever the excuse that might be offered as to why those 80% really aren't doing much. And the idea being here that the 80% are doing 20% of the work. So they may be doing something, but it seems to me that they could be possibly doing more. And it's possible also they aren't doing anything. Mm-hmm. Are the 80% in spiritual jeopardy? Let me reread this out of Matthew 25. For to everyone who has shall more be given, and he shall have abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away, and cast out the worthless slave into the outer darkness, in that place where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't see a lot of gray area here. And so I'm not trying to be this. I'm not trying to overstate this, but I don't want to understate it either. I want us to think about people who are not engaged, what this may say about them. We need to do more tapping on the shoulder. Warren Wilcox said that to me. And I'm sure that he didn't coin it. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one he said it to. But I remember it. I will always remember him saying that. I'm like, you know what? That really would be something that is necessary, because you think if you wait for people to step up, if you wait for someone to say, hey, I'll do that, you're going to be waiting a long time. But what if you went up there and you tapped them on the shoulder and said, hey, what do you think about this? Going back to the person that I tapped on their shoulder to lead singing. Would not have led singing had I not tapped them on the shoulder to lead singing. Is that going to happen? You can almost count on it. Leave me alone. Mind your business. This is the business. You know, this is what we do. You know, what do you mean, mind your business? But this will happen, and maybe it would interfere with whether or not you would go up and tap someone on the shoulder. Someone else that I tapped on the shoulder not long ago to lead an adult Bible class had never led an adult Bible class and is doing a very good job. Had I not tapped him on the shoulder, I'm not saying I'm the guy. My point is this, I'm just giving you my personal experience in having tapped someone on the shoulder. Would you do this? And these are not the only instances. Sorry, your hand was up a second ago. And
That's okay. I just wanted to kind of go along with what you're saying here. You know, we are charged with, if we see a brother or sister going down the wrong path, try to bring them back. And, you know, to your point about what we just read in Matthew, they need to be involved. They need to be working for the Lord. And just coming to church and sitting in the pew is not what it's all about. So it's really our responsibility as a Christian, if we love our brothers and sisters, to point that out to them. So
imagine that there's this. If everybody was given an arrow, I think we can agree that everybody's given something. The 80%, if they were just put a little bit of that into work, how powerful would that congregation be? Be unstoppable. You think about Tower of Babel, they were focused on the wrong thing. What was it that the Lord said about them? Nothing will be impossible. Why? Because they were of one mind. They are focused on the same project. You know, you can move out of the way, or because we're coming through, because this is going to happen. We're together on this. I want to talk about the everything guy. There's two phases to this. What is the everything guy? He does everything, right? You name it, he does it. Who is the everything guy? Well, usually it's imposed on the preacher, right? Well, the preacher will do it. After all, we own him, right? He gets paid to use his talent. He gets paid to use his talents, right? I mean, that's how that works. You know, oh no, that's not it. Yes, that is how that goes. Well, that's not right. You're right. That's not right. And so we have to take a close look at, when we think about the paid preacher, what that necessarily means. I'm going to share a thought with you. You may disagree with me on this, but it might help us to see what this really should mean when we have someone who fills the pulpit and delivers a lesson every week. They're not being paid to preach. Wait, what? They're not being paid to preach as if they were being paid to be a Christian. They're being paid to not have a secular job. They're being paid to not work. You see the difference? They're getting an income so that they can focus their work on this. Think about what happened with Paul. when he was a tent maker. His efforts were divided because he's trying to have an income while preaching, right? What happened when the gift came? The monetary gift came. He stopped working. He left the secular work, the tent making, to go to the work because now he can. He was being paid to not work. Do you see what the principle here is? If we can think of it in these lines, maybe this is a difference without a distinction, or however you want to say that. My point in saying this is so that we have a proper view of all the roles in the church. If he's being paid, we understand why that's necessary for him to be able to focus on what the purpose here is. And we can go into a lot of details here. What can this do to others who should be using their talents? What can that do? Seems like kind of an obvious answer, doesn't it?
Make it complacent. Like
Make it
It's being
complacent.
taken for.
What's the use? You know, he's the guy that fixes the copier. He's the one that vacuums the auditorium. He's the one that makes sure that the supplies are there. He's the one that does the sermon. He's the one that does the Bible classes. He's the one that chooses the class material. He's the one that does X, Y, Z, and what other alphabet you want to throw in there. He's doing all of it because we're paying him. Getting paid to do these things. And so, as a consequence, people who perhaps would be using their talents are like, well, that base is covered. Well, that base is covered. Well, that base is covered. Because the everything guy is being required to do everything. What about this everything guy? There's another side to this coin. Sometimes it's taken by the preacher or another leader. I'm the everything guy. Heed me, fear me. And why? Possibly it's this domination. It needs to be done my way. Do you know a Diotrephes? Have you ever known one? You can find out about him in 3 John 9. John was not impressed with Diotrephes and was going to set the record straight when he showed up. What was Diotrephes doing? Somebody give me first. He what's that?
Loves to be first.
Loves to be first in everything. Even putting people out of the church. Hey, you, I don't like your face. Get out. It has to be done my way, or it's not being done correctly. Something to watch out for, by the way, when we're teaching someone our talents, we're showing someone the way, you have to do it exactly the way I do it. It has to be done my way. What if they have a different way of doing it that's as effective or perhaps more effective? What about that? Nope. It has to be done like this. What can this do to those who would be using their talents? As far as the Diotrephes thing goes, have you ever been? Diotrephes. That's kind of a tough one to answer, isn't it? Think about this. Are we indispensable? Can we come to believe that we are? I think sometimes the behavior indicates that it's like, you know what? The only reason this place even floats is because of me. And that might be true. But why is that true? Going back to the questions that preceded this one might help to open our eyes to that reality. The graveyards are full of indispensable men. Charles de Gaulle. What's his point? You're going to die. And whatever things just could not do without you are going to do without you. It's going to happen. And so if we can embrace that, maybe we can address this. Can we avoid this mindset? And I'm asking, can we avoid this mindset? What can we do to avoid this mindset? We might have a lot of talent. We might have we're very effective at what we do, and things move forward a lot because of us, but we can start believing something that's beyond what we really are. David.
A willingness and a desire.
Willingness and desire. Yeah. Yes. Will help us to have the proper frame of mind. Yeah, Brett.
I think it, trying to find it, we read before, it says, being humble in mind, and it struck me, it's one thing to be on the surface, be humble, not necessarily fake, but just, humble in the sense that you make sure that everybody kind of knows that you're trying to be humble. But then there's the true humility would be something on very, very deep inside that's only between you and God. And I think that would help shape this, what you're talking about, you know.
And I was thinking like if you're like the indispensable guy, you just temper it and just sit back and see if it can get done with somebody that you think is inferior as an indispensable guy.
Sure.
And you might be surprised.
Yeah.
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 You
Well,
might
go
be
ahead and
surprised.
fail. I'll show you.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Marta.
I may be incorrect, but I kind of figured if a preacher, or myself, in other words, doing my job, they don't need me.
Right. Yeah. Working your way out of a job, essentially. Yeah. Yeah.
I think having the primary goal, heaven, and not in your vested interest other than heaven, and to not have a monetary gain of any sort.
What is it that's holding you in that spot? Is it the accolade? Is it the notoriety? Is it the whatever you fill in the blank? What is it holds someone in that spot where they come to believe this? And it may have come from people telling them, not in those words, you are indispensable, but treating them as if they were, to the point where they start believing that they are. They start believing their own press, and then they start living and moving in a way that is dangerous. Yes.
You kind of lose your focus a little. I mean, Christ is the head, and we're members of the body.
There you go.
Right, we're members of the body. and
Right.
So you gotta keep that focus.
Right. You think about how Paul spoke about himself. He did assert his apostleship, but he said all whatever it was that I learned before this is just rubbish. And I'm just a guy, you know. I'm just a regular guy. I'm trying to get this done just like you are. I really appreciate what he said in the Roman letter, starting at about talking about the thing that the thing that I should want to do. That's the thing I don't do. The thing I shouldn't do, that's what I do. And I got this war going on inside of me. What was he saying to the people in Rome? He said, I'm not telling you for even 1 second that I've got this nailed down. I struggle too. I've got this problem just like you do. I needed to know that about Paul. I needed to know that he went through that because I go through that. But he was still able to be effective for his time while he was here. But after he was no longer here, the church did still go on, didn't it? It still did go on because what did he do? Timothy, Silas, the others who went around with him, he's handing these things off to him, saying to Timothy, you know, don't be timid, but you know, we haven't been given a spirit of timidity, but one of power, love, and discipline. And so he's trying to encourage Timothy, you're going to be picking up the ball and running after I'm gone. So here's how you need to do that. And then after you, 2 Timothy 2 verse 2, some of you might know what that one has to say, teaching other men to teach other men. And so it perpetuates from there because it comes with the understanding that I am certainly not indispensable. What's the difference between ownership and stewardship? Any thoughts how that might apply to this?
Well, God owns everything here. He has allowed us to use it.
Yeah, go to the parable, right?
Yeah, be good stewards of what he has given us.
Right. But do sometimes people think this is mine? I own it. This is, and it can happen for any number of reasons. But it's a mindset that certainly needs to be watched for. And I won't, dig down into that too much. But I think it's an important distinction that needs to be made when we think about what's been given to us. That if we understand that it's stewardship, then we are not going to get hung up on this indispensable thing. It's a temporary arrangement that I will be called to account for. I've been given charge over something, but it does not belong to me. Those first two understood. This is not mine. This never was. Somebody puts a bag of money in your hand, that doesn't make it your money. It just means you're in charge of it. You're watching over it. And that's what happened with them. Just like, you know what? I have a responsibility. I'm going to make this better. I'm going to do something with this. So, can we interfere or even quash someone's talents? My talent can beat up your talent. My talent's more important than your talent. It can happen. I've watched it happen. It's disgusting. It's exasperating. It's not to say that the person who's behaving like this doesn't have talent, but it's just almost like, kind of move aside, little man, little person. Let the man show you how this is done.
It makes me think in American history where the colored, the blacks were slaves. That was this right here. The the white people were saying we're better than you, and they wanted just to control.
The superiority mentality. You can go back to First Corinthians 12 on this one. There was a contest between people of their different gifts. You had some who were prophesying, and some who were speaking in tongues, and Paul saying, "What is wrong with you guys? Why aren't you working together on this? Why aren't we coming together as a body to work together, not competing with each other?" We see this Philippians 1. I didn't write this out, make a reference to it, but Paul is in prison. And he's talking about those who are out there still preaching the word, thinking that they can cause him to be upset because they're outdoing him, out there preaching the word. He says there are some who are preaching out of pretense and some out of genuine motivation. He said, it doesn't matter to me as long as Christ is being preached. I'm good. They're not doing me any harm. They're not hurting my feelings. They're not showing themselves a better preacher than me. Okay, But it's funny how we can get hung up on things like this. You think, this? How about a singing contest? Have you ever seen or heard that happen? Someone has a really good voice, and they overwhelm everybody in the auditorium because they can. And they have that ability, and not realizing that people have their spiritual footprint all over them. And the person who perhaps has a lot of self-doubt as far as their ability to sing, what are they going to do? They're probably going to stop singing. I've seen that happen. Just like that somebody get a sideward look because they weren't carrying the tune just right. No more singing. We weren't given singing as an option, by the way. We were commanded to sing. And so this took that person's meager ability to sing and shut it down completely. So we have to be careful in that respect. It could also happen in this area. You'd have I guess you'd call it a teaching contest. where someone saying, well, why are you teaching on this subject? This person, this family member of mine taught on that very subject recently and covered just fine, thank you. And why are you trying to outdo them? Just no, we're just needing to talk about it some more. Can you exhaust a biblical topic, really? So what are some other areas? And before I move on from this one, I want to ask you, have you ever seen or can think of places or ways that talents can actually shove another talent aside? If you've ever actually seen that happen.
Maybe in an eldership, if there's, you can find maybe one that's just so much stronger and so much more outspoken and quote seems to press and push and whatever.
Yeah. Why is that? And it's funny you should bring that up. And I've seen this happen, and I haven't seen a ton of elderships, but you hear this term. So it must be something that happens where you have the head elder. Anybody ever heard that term? The head elder. What's wrong with this picture? There's no such thing as a head elder. Now, there may be one that's more vocal, if they are more capable of representing what the eldership is deciding on. They're the spokesman. Maybe that's it. But the experiences I've had is they're much more than just a spokesman. They're the guy, and everybody else gets in line.
It really jumps out at me because it seems like such a simple thing, but that was one of the first things that caused the apostasy in the church as a whole. Is men in different places for good reasons to protect against heresy, to be the spokesman, like you're saying. And it was all meant well, but very soon it became this thing where there was one guy who represented the congregation, and that spelled the end for so many groups. That was the end of them as a true church.
When we try to outmaneuver God, overrule Him, or come up with our own ideas, they're foredoomed to fail. God's ideas work; they just do. His ideas work. All we have to do is find out what they are and follow them and apply them evenly and have the humility that we need in order to work with one another, not at one another. So what comes next? I think somebody mentioned this one earlier. Isn't this really where it happens? Encouraging each other in their talents. And what I'm talking about specifically here is you are showing someone how to do something. What if they do it better than you? Uh-oh. Now tone it down. Now slow it down here. I got this one, grasshopper. I've got this. You just need to kind of watch me a little bit. And they're like, they're off to the races. They're good to go. Encourage that. Encourage it. Yeah. Make me look like a piker. I don't care. Get out there and do this. Isn't it going to require a little bit of humility to do this? And the question that I put in the handout that I didn't put up here was, is it hard to defer to someone? Hand it off. Here you go. And then step back and get your hands out of it and let them do it. Or are we more like parents trying to teach your kids how to walk, and you're like this, following them around, trying to keep them. We wouldn't want them to fall down now, but
maybe the master can learn from the student.
It happens.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, they've got different ideas and they can have ways of doing it better.
Right.
If you're real stiff necked and you don't want to be flexible and learn because you think you're the master, there's always room for improvement.
Stewardship versus ownership. When you see that you are a steward, handing it off is going to be a whole lot easier than if you own it. This is mine. This belongs to me. I possess it. I did put it up there. Talents are portable. and they are transferable. I think we've been looking at this the whole time. And what is the point of me bringing this out? Well, think about what happened in Jerusalem. They had been there for a few years, learning at the feet of the apostles, all of the doctrines and so forth that were being spoken to them to be later written down for them to follow as the church, to be organized. The way God wanted the church to be organized and the way for it to function. We could see in the early going, they were so close, meeting from house to house and taking their meals with each other. I mean, and no one counted anybody above one another. I mean, they had everything in common. They're taking care of each other. What a great scenario. And what were they learning? Well, we get to Acts chapter 6, and we see that there's a problem with the Hellenistic widows being overlooked. And so men were called together and say, hey, the apostles say, hey, you guys who have these talents, can you handle this? Okay, we're talking plus 3,000 people. I don't know what percentage of them were the widows, but they were probably handling a lot of people. We're talking about 7 guys handling a lot of people. I'm going to say that the 7 people delegated a little bit of this. They probably found some people who say, hey, come and help me with this. Now, they had the authority to say, this goes here and there and there and so forth. But can you help me be the hands on this and get this done? So the persecution comes. They're learning all these things, and the persecution comes, and they're scattered. What happens with those talents? They take them with them, and they show them to the next group of people that they become a part of. This congregation springs up here. This one springs up here, and so on it goes. And wherever they go, they're taking their abilities, their talents with them to show other people how to do these things and growing the church through this. Was the persecution a bad thing? Probably when you're living in the moment, you're like, yeah, this is a really bad thing. But when you look back on it, you say, but if it hadn't been for that, this group would not be there. This person would not have been reached. And so on it goes. And on a personal note, when I was growing up in Rifle, one of the things that came and went over the years was the oil shale industry. This started back in the early 20th century. They like, oh, we got this great idea on how to do that. And they get all fired up about it. And then, oh, that's not going to work. And then the economy would tank, right? Mm-hmm. Then somebody else would come along with the wise ideas. And, I think I know how we can overcome that. And they get all reared up about it. The economy goes up because everybody's throwing their money in there. Oh, I guess that's not going to work. And down goes the economy, right? When I was there, that happened there in the early 80s. Here comes Exxon, and they're building out these areas, and where there weren't towns, now there's all kinds of dwellings and stores and everything all over the place. It just exploded overnight. So you have people moving to the area, and opportunities for evangelism are there. So the church is growing. Everything's going gangbusters because the economy turned around. And they decided, guess it's not going to work. Goes the economy, and the people who were a part of the church there had to move. And they took this with them wherever they went. And they became effective in other places. Now, we don't like how that happened because we want them here. But God is saying, I need them over there. You may not like how that happened. Might have kind of, it made you sad to see people say goodbye right now. But you hear about them where they are doing things and they're keeping on. You're like, okay, I'll see them again, and I'll see the ones that they helped wherever they went. Passing the mantle. 1 Kings 19:19. I didn't put that in the words of that passage there, but you know what's going on here. Elijah literally puts his mantle on Elisha. And there's some more information, and I encourage you to read it. There's other things that go on there leading up to this next part that I want to talk about a little more specifically. Elijah knows this. He's not indispensable. The prophet Elijah is not indispensable. And I'm getting ready to leave. I need to show someone which way to go. Same thing happened with Moses and Joshua. And you could probably think of these pairs of people throughout the scriptures where this one educated this one and brought them along, imparting to them their ways, not just sitting them down one day and saying, here's how you do this, and here's how you do this, and kind of a rule book. The person followed them around and watched. They're going, so that's how you handle that, you know. So Elisha obviously knows Elijah well enough that he's taken by this whole gesture that he's made toward him. We want our successor to outshine us. We want that. We want them to be better than we were. 2 Kings 2 and verse 9, I'll go ahead and read that. Now it came about when they had crossed over there at the Jordan River that Elijah said to Elisha, ask what I shall do for you. And Elisha said, please let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. Do you want the person you're showing these things to have a double spirit, or to have more, or to accomplish more than you did? We should want that. We should desire that. Outdo me. Outdo me. Go out there and make me look like I had no idea what I was talking about. What is your legacy? Did somebody read Hebrews 13 and verse 7?
Remember those who led you, who spoke the word of God to you, and consider the result of their conduct, intimidated their faith.
Imitated their, I put imitated, I meant to imitate. I'm sorry about that. Imitate their faith. You look at this part of the Hebrew letter, and the tone seems to indicate this. Remember those who led you. Now, it could be that remembering them means they've moved away and they're not around here anymore. Probably what that means is that they're no longer here, period. They've gone on. He says, now, I want you to remember those who led you, who spoke the word of God to you, and considering the result of their conduct, imitate their faith. So a legacy perhaps is being left to you. There may be someone who's yet here that you look up to, and they're like, man, they are really, without them in my life, I think I would really be floundering. I think I'd really be struggling. I'd have to hopefully find someone who could help me along and be an encouragement to me, but they are really making a difference in my life. I appreciate the legacy that they have been to me. I mean, well, whatever, you know what I mean.
One way to think about it is a legacy, and Alexander Hamilton said that a legacy is a field that you plant, but you never get to see it grow.
Interesting.
Because with just like you teach one person, you don't know how it's going to turn out.
Exactly so. And I can't remember who I was talking to earlier about, was it you, Marwan, about the sower? I can't remember. See how my memory works? Parable of the sower. Did the sower look behind him? See, okay, oops, I need to move those seeds over here. They sowed the seed. That's it. They sowed the seed. Some of it produced and some of it didn't. We are sowers, not soil analysts. So we put it out there. If it takes root, it's because of the soil, not because of the sower. And so we have to consider that when we think about the effect someone has had on us. that we may have an effect on someone ultimately that that person didn't ever meet or know. So what else? What are some of the other things that tie into this whole overarching thing of we think about excuse me improving our talents or what to do with them next? What else is there? Is there anything else? Did I cover it?
I mean, isn't that what Moses did when he got to the Jordan? He passed it on to Joshua.
Yeah.
And he knew that he wasn't going to have to the promised land.
Mm-hmm. There are so many who followed someone else, and so it goes. And it's an amazing thing. If you could trace those steps, if you could see that network, God does. God sees the network. He sees who's connected to whom and how that happened. And hope maybe one day that's part of the plan when we're all together to say, so because of you, this happened, down the line to this. Yeah, that's how that happened. That's my human being mind, by the way. I don't know if it's going to happen that way. Just that's a curiosity that I have. So,
Jeff,
yes.
the question of what else,
Mhm.
my initial reaction, you can tell me if I'm way off, but is to rejoice and to celebrate and find those little wins and
Oh, that's excellent.
and recognize recognize somebody for
That's an excellent point. I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's kind of how I'm going to tie things up at the end, but so important at this point is it's been this very information stoic approach to this whole thing. Is let's have some joy along the way. Let's see the victories that are won and be joyous and excited and maybe reinvigorates and moves you forward and helps you see why Paul would say to the Thessalonians, commending them for the things that they had already done. He said, excel still more. You're already doing it. You're going gangbusters, guys. Let's bump up the game a little bit more. Let's just really put the pedal to the metal, really go forward with this in the excitement. Read the greetings. I think sometimes we skip over that part when we read Paul's letters. Paul, an apostle to the church at whatever, and we see the greetings and the how he opens his letter. Maybe you don't skip over that, but I think we'll get to the body of the letter and see what doctrines that we have in there so that we can know how the church should be organized. And that's all good and it's all right. But don't skip over the joy part. Don't skip over the part where you say, you guys are great. You guys are, you got me so excited. What he says to the Romans, I read that real quick just because this one has always stuck out in my mind. You think about the church that you were a member of, receiving a letter from the Apostle Paul and having him say this about the work that you're doing. This is Romans 1, starting with verse 8. So sometimes I think the work that we do, David's point, happens in a vacuum and nobody really knows about it. And so it's just busy work. It's just something we do to make sure we're good before God, and kind of minimize it that way. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is being proclaimed throughout the whole world. That's incredible. That's an incredible statement. How is that possible? It's because what you do in the name of the Lord does not happen in a vacuum. The lives that you touch, who touch other lives, you will never know it. And because you have been given permission, it's not an assignment, it's permission to be involved in this. He goes to the slaves in that parable and he says, I'm giving you permission to take stewardship of this. You have my permission. Not my requirement, not my task. You have my permission. God has permitted us to have these talents. What will we do with them? What will our attitude be toward these things? Anything else under the what else column? That's a really good point about this, how the celebration side of what it is that we're a part of. It's very important. Why do you think we sing together? Why does the words rejoice up here in the scriptures so much? We need to rejoice over this, to be thrilled to be a part of this. Long-term effect, helping others to their talents or encouraging them into those. Is this possibly true? I didn't say they won't leave, did I? But they sure are less likely to leave if they're engaged. There's a sense of being invested in something significant. Is that a true statement? That if people were to employ their talents more with the joy and the excitement of something bigger than themselves, that the likelihood is, yeah, that happiness thing, yeah, I'll pass. I'll pass on that. The joy of bringing joy to other people and lifting up people who are down and bringing them up. Yeah, that's just not for me. Who says that? Said no one ever, No one says that. And so we engage people for the purpose of seeing the bigger thing that they are a part of is something much bigger than any one of us. Do you think that this is true? That there's a clarity of what their calling necessarily looks like. Being called to something, if you leave it open-ended like that, with no real solid definition, can kind of leave you going, well, I feel like I'm part of what's going on here. I think I'm in. I think this. I feel that. As far as my being a part of this particular congregation. But what if you had something you look at and say, and that's what I do? That's my part right there. This is my part. It's tangible. It's measurable. You can look at it and say, and I know what I can do to make it better. I feel like I've improved, but I know that there's some more room for me to improve more. That person's sticking around. You want to be relevant? I know I do. Have you ever felt like you weren't relevant? Just kind of a blank, a nobody, a cipher, you're just kind of there. But when there's relevance to what you do, and the difference is made not only by what you observe in the results yourself, but that encouragement thing comes along, and somebody says, you do that really well. Somebody noticed, I noticed what I do, and now somebody said so. What if you did this? And I've done this before, and I've told people, talk about them behind their back. That sounds negative, doesn't it? What if you talked about them behind their back, but all you were saying was about the good things they were doing, and that's what got back around to them? You know how rumors travel, and by the time they arrive at the person it's about, it's inflated, and it's no good. How about a positive rumor? How about a positive encouragement that was not said to the person? By the time and it gets back around to them, do you think that's going to carry a little more weight, knowing that that's what people have been talking about? It's one thing for me to go to that person, you're really good at that, and they may take it as a compliment, and it's useful. But what if that's what people are talking about? How good you are doing at something, and you found out about it. What kind of weight would that carry? Can we start some good rumors? Could that be maybe a good thing we could do for people so that they have this going for them? A sense of relevance. I matter. I know I want to matter. And not for my own self. I want to matter because there is something bigger than me, bigger than any of this. And I get to be a part of it. So, is being active a guarantee? No. Obviously, the answer is no. So we have people there, many reasons why people leave the faith. Yeah, internal conflict. Sometimes they just go to a different congregation, but sometimes they check out, don't they? They're like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I was happier before I came here. Ooh, what a commentary. Now, that goes perhaps to a degree of involvement they had themselves, and certainly they will bear the responsibility for that decision. But let's make no mistakes about this. We can we can work as hard as we can, and this is still going to happen. They're attracted to false teaching, they're in pursuit of themselves, and the list goes on. Building and enhancing talents in ourselves and others is not a panacea, but it is a very powerful building block. It does lend a lot of glue, if you will, to the body. An opportunity to serve. Ultimately, building your talents and using them is an opportunity to serve others. I have written out here, I need one other scripture reader here. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 through 11, and we'll wrap up this lesson. Who's going to be my reader? Go ahead, Cody.
Starting in verse 10. As each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Whoever speaks, let him speak, as it were, the utterance of God. Whoever serves, let him do so as by the, my eyes are blurry, by the strength which God supplies, so that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom belongs the glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen.
Isn't that why we're doing it? I'm not trying to outshine you. I'm not trying to outdo you. I'm not trying to out-talent you or anything else like that. This is to the glory of God and to the service of my brothers and sisters. It's got to be the motivation behind any of these things that we do. Remember from whom we received those talents. You just got to remember where it came from. You just forget. People pat themselves on the back a lot for what they're able to do. They don't realize that they did nothing. It was given to them. We will be called to account for them. And that's really the bottom line for all these things. Blessed is the one who hears the words. We come full circle now. Good and faithful slave, enter into the joy of your master. What I really like about this passage, it was pointed out, I think, I can't remember if it was here. When Lynn Williams did a talk, I don't know if it was at Kingsburg or if it was here, but he said something that will always stick with me. It says, good and faithful slave. It does not say good and perfect slave, does it? It says faithful. Be faithful. Be faithful to the things he has called us to do. Good and faithful slave, enter into the joy of your master. We can know his joy. So go out there and spread the joy. Thank you very much.